welcome to Sobre, Mesa, a podcast from our table to yours. Today, we're going to be diving into some different terms related to Latin American heritage that are popular here, Latin America. We're going to talk about the uses, the controversies, if there are any, which sometimes there are. And we're just going to have an open table discussion about what those terms mean to us and what the community is saying about those terms and how we use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, first of all, I know we touched a little bit on this in past episodes, but what do we all identify as within the umbrella of Latin American?
Yeah.
Personally, I identify as Latina or Latinx. I use both interchangeably. More Latina when I'm referring to myself in general, more Latinx when I'm referring to my people in general. Just to try to be more inclusive to the non-binary community, but I know that always strikes controversy.
Yes.
That's a ditto for me, essentially. I definitely like to use the term Latin American as well because I was born in this country. And I definitely don't want to take away from like the Americanness that is inherently in me from living my entire life in the United States, right? But I definitely think that Latin American has become too broad of a term to so to speak. I like to say, if I'm like actually getting into it with someone, I like to say Dominican American because honestly I can't speak for anybody else in the Latinx community. I can speak for my experience and my family that lives mostly in the Dominican Republic. I have some family other places, but like I identify with that. And so it's like tricky because you obviously don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth and of course the Latinx term I have adapted it since I have heard of it in the last like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
I think we all agree on that. Just in trying to be a bit more
inclusive,
bit more inclusive to our non-binary friends and peers.
I feel you because I have a similar relationship with like all the terms because I don't want to exclude any part of me, right? Like I don't want to leave out the part of my Americanness. I don't want to leave out my Latin Americanness. And if I say one or the other, it sounds like I'm denying the other, right? So it's like, oh, I'm Latin American, doesn't sound American to me. Latin American, like, what do we do?
Exactly.
So Latinx is nice because I feel like maybe that's a combination. It sort of implies that there's an American thing going on because it was so popular here. I really felt like it got more of a following here, that term, or at least became, used in, especially in educational settings and professional settings and all that. So I love the term for that reason. We're going to talk about the complicated parts about it. But overall, I would say that is like a nice, thing. Because even Chicana, like I am Mexican, but I'm also Peruvian. So if I say Chicana, like I'm completely ignoring my Peruvian side, which I'm so proud of, half and half.
Of course. Yeah, and I feel the same way where I'm like, I do identify as like Latina, and like when I'm talking about like the collective, I use like Latinx, Latine, but like I am half white, so like a lot of the times when people ask me, I say like I'm mixed, and then I say like I'm mixed with like I'm Latina, I'm Colombian, and then like the other things that I am, you know, and so like just because like I love both sides of my family, but like I look this way, like no one's gonna look at me and be like, you're white.
And I must say, it's also worth noting that I just recently, like probably like 2019 till like now, have started adopting the term Afro-Latina because I didn't even know that was really a term.
I feel like none of us did.
No, that was never
universally accepted up until a couple years ago.
And then I was like, finally, because for the longest time I was like, I'll have like black people, African Americans come to me and they'll be like, "Are you black? Are you mixed? Like, what's the deal?" And then
what are you?
Yeah, what am I? And so then I just go straight into like, I'm Venezuelan, so that it would just like, so that I wouldn't have to go through the niceties of being like, I'm Latina. There's black people in Latin America if you didn't know, you know what I mean? So I would just cut it there, and also. Growing up in Florida, I until I got to college, until I moved to Chicago, I almost always used Latina and Hispanic interchangeably. Point blank.
Yes. Well, yeah, because it was like we weren't taught that there was a difference until we got to college. Until people are like becoming more woke culture was like a
sure.
thing.
And also,
where they're like, let's be PC now.
Fairly enough, and I feel
and
like
you can be both.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Many
it's
of us
just
we
not
are.
everyone.
We are.
We
but
are.
All of
you
us are,
can't.
yeah.
They're not interchangeable. Though.
Yeah.
Exactly.
While
Yes.
there are many people who embody both.
Exactly, and since there were so many Hispanic people in where I grew up, there were a lot of Latin people in general because there are
Shout
a lot
out Florida.
Shout out Florida. Also, there are a lot of Brazilians in Orlando specifically. Love it. I love it. No, I love Brazil. Shout out to Camila's if you know where you're at. Yes. Good restaurant. Anyway, but since there were all these Hispanic people around us, they used it interchangeably as well because I think that a lot of Latinos use that interchangeably in Latin America, especially.
Yeah.
I've seen it on TV, like on Univision. You see Hispanos and Latinos interchangeably.
It's true. It's true, and a lot of people get their terms, their terminology, the way they use them from what they see on TV, the media, and that's a
or
big,
like what they grow up with, like for the longest time, like I hate this, but like I was only exposed to like my Latin family, like not a Latin community, so like it never even occurred to me that there could be any other kind of Latine person that doesn't look the way that I do, like like was black, that was Asian, like or anything else, because like how could I know? There was literally no one else around that I would have known that.
There's this girl on TikTok that has gone like completely viral because she's Asian, but she's Puerto Rican. And she doesn't even speak English. She's
I know
just
who you're
Puerto
talking
Rican,
about.
but she's Asian and she's of Asian descent. And so she speaks Spanish, and then people were like shook, rattled.
But she was like born on the island, like
do not fit into the predisposed box that we have allowed. But that's not the point.
And also like that conversation is like a bigger conversation about how like there was so much colonialism and like immigration of other cultures of like in like the Lebanese people in like Colombia, like Shakira is Lebanese, like how would you exactly like you can't just ignore that, like
and we shouldn't ignore that. We should celebrate
there's always been so like since the beginning of our time is like there's always been so much mixing
migration
of everything,
and that's why people didn't know about Afro Latinas because they weren't represented in the media and TV. So like they think it's a specific shade of brown.
When I saw that girl on TikTok, I was like, oh, so that's how people felt when I would like answer the phone and talk to my mom in Spanish, and they were like, oh, you know what I mean? Literally, I was like, oh,
like the Mr. Krabs meme.
Like it is a little rattling because you see like all these people, you're like, this is what these people look like, this is what those people look like, and then you see something that kind of like feels like a glitch in the system.
On the flip side of that, I have had Latinos, other Latinx people look at me and be like, but you're white, you can't be Dominican. And I'm like, of course, that's not how that works at all.
I always say every day there is a Latina actor in the world that loses a role because she doesn't look Latina enough. She's too white. She's too black. Like it's not the shade of brown, and it's so frustrating. And then they'll hire someone that isn't Latina but looks the right shade of brown.
And it's always like people who aren't from the community making those decisions. Like because you obviously know.
Coming from like Florida and like just tropical climates to we're in Chicago. It is
cold. It is a crisp February right now.
Yes.
You lose your tan.
Yes, I know. For like me, I've lived in Chicago now for 3+ years, and I just get progressively
whiter.
That's not your choice.
And it's like there's no sun ever.
Oh
I'm getting no vitamin D, and I feel like it's like almost like skin color dysphoria.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way.
I had like an identity crisis when I was shopping for foundation in the winter, and they were like, "You're this shade," and I was like, "No way." And then they would like test, and I'd be like, "Oh my god!"
Literally shake it to my core.
I don't even know who I am. Like I'm looking at myself, and I'm like, "That's not right." Like I don't feel good about like the color that I'm portraying because that just doesn't feel natural.
But it's also because you're not fitting the stereotype now.
Exactly. It's like because before when I lived in Florida, I didn't have to prove to anybody I was Hispanic or Latina, right? Like they looked at me and they got it. Like in fact, people used to ask me more if I was mixed or black when I was there, and now I'm like I look like a straight up white girl, and that's really shocking for someone who never experienced it.
And also in climates where there are obviously Latinx people that are present, that's when they start going into, okay, well, where are you from? Like, where is your family from? Because even when you go to, like, Pilsen and something, have you ever, like, caught an Uber in Pilsen, and then they're like, oh, you're Latina, where are you from? I'm like, fine, I'll bite. I'll talk to you on my way home, like, I will.
So Sometimes it's good. A lot of times it's like...
It's not, I know.
Can we just drive? Thank you.
Oh my god. Yeah, so you tell me.
It depends.
I always try to avoid it until they're like, I know you're Latina, where are you from? And I'm like, alright.
Fine,
Okay,
fine.
all right.
Alright. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But when we get into the term Latinx, it was mainly accepted and incorporated into our English language to incorporate our non-binary
And gender
siblings
nonconforming.
and gender non-conforming siblings, which honestly they didn't get the visibility they deserved until recently either. Hence why the term didn't get the visibility.
Yeah,
they
like,
still
still
don't.
not.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
And it's not even just like Latin culture either.
No, that's just worldwide. Yeah, worldwide.
They
That's across the
been
board.
done dirty.
It's true. I haven't even heard, I mean, I know this is a Latinx show, but I haven't even heard the term for Asian non-binary people.
Yeah.
Where are they at?
That's a good question.
Answer down below.
Let
Let
us
us know.
Please, we want to know.
Or maybe, well, they have different languages, so they don't have, maybe they don't have gendered languages. I don't know. I don't know like that.
All right,
I
we'll
don't
look
know.
into it.
We'll look into it.
But on like the whole Latinx thing, like, you know, a lot of Latin Americans reject it because they feel like it doesn't fit into grammar, right? So they feel like, oh, that's not something that's natural to Spanish.
Yeah.
That's not something that we can like incorporate in a way. They feel like it was created by white people, like for white people. That's like a white lib thing, you know, that's like enforcing their terms, like, you know, on us, even though we don't want them. We have our own shit, you know, but we were talking the other night.
That's a valid thought.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
That's
No,
a
it's
super
really
valid
valid.
reaction.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just impose like this English language on Spanish grammar, right? Like,
Exactly.
if it doesn't fit, it simply does not fit.
valid.
And sometimes we have to remember that we are living in a different society than Latin Americans as like people that live in the US.
Yeah.
So sometimes the terms that we're like, this is it. It's like not applicable to them.
No, it's like,
And
this is it for us.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
this is what works for us.
Yes,
You know?
and sometimes we have to get out of the way of like, America is the only way we do things and we're gonna set the standard.
Yeah,
like,
it's
not
like-
necessarily,
because
especially not in this.
We stay doing that across the board, across all types of things
Exactly.
as Americans, but
No, totally.
Yeah.
And
definitely not
and you were
us.
talking the other night about how, you know, it feels like an erasure though, you know, to claim that, you know, Latinx is not, you know, acceptable or whatever. And you know, you were talking about the history of it, so if you want to talk on that.
Yeah, so I recently I'm a TikTok queen. I love TikTok.
Yes.
So I follow this woman on TikTok, and she is lovely. I'll put her in the comments below. But she basically gives like rundowns of like news updates, what's happening in Central South America, like all throughout Latin America. What's going on, and she breaks down a lot of the history of things. And I saw one of her videos basically being like, well, where did Latinx come from? Because a lot of people feel like, well, it's like a white version of this, and which I also have to say is like, okay, but weren't we all colonized by white people anyway? Like, you're using the white man's language that was given to you in the first place.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, an interesting take. Like,
true.
you know,
That's
I mean,
a
not
hot
all.
take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this woman was saying that that the first time that the Latinx was used was in activists, but in like the 90s and early 2000s, by people who were gender nonconforming, who were basically saying like, I need a term that identifies for me and that I can see myself in. And so they would write on posters like Latina, Latinos, and then they would literally X out the A or the O, and so that's when you would see like the X. So at the end of the day, like, it is a term created by the community itself as a form of protest, and she was saying that like, even grammatically, yes, it doesn't align with Spanish, but like, isn't that the point? Like, it is in and of itself a protest.
Yeah.
Just grammatically being like, I'm gonna make you stop and think
on the language.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I just think it's a really interesting conversation, and like, as someone who is cis, I don't feel like I should have the spotlight in that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Of course,
And so,
yeah.
but like that, I want to listen, I want to learn and hear like what people from that community feel, and like how they choose to identify and what they feel is the best for them. And I know that's also not a monolith. Like, it's gonna vary from person to person.
Of course, and obviously as the evolution of their knowledge, because unfortunately, like, trans and non-binary people don't get the knowledge that they need very early on until they're fully realized human beings. So maybe the things that we used back in the 90s, 2000s aren't always going to apply to us, and maybe we're in that transitionary period right now. Like maybe
I definitely think we are. Like everything that's happening on a global scale right now, it's like everything is going to shit. Sorry to say it. But no, seriously, read the room. But like, seriously, very, like everything is being put under a microscope right now, and like everyone's having to learn whether they want to or not. Like it's being put in your face, and I'm the opinion that that's a great thing. I think that's like, of course, I'm all about that anyway. But like. My most frustrating thing is the fact that, like, I care so much about these kinds of things, and so many people just don't, especially in the U.S., because the mindset is so individualistic. Whereas, like, other countries is very, like, communal and
on
stuff.
The collective,
and so, like, this is finally getting people to look outside of their own lives and outside of their own families and say, like, hey, maybe I should care about other people, that it doesn't have to benefit me. Like, I should just care about other human beings because, like, if we don't, the world will end.
Yes.
It literally.
And of course, like, we are under a very, leftist bias. We work in the arts. Yeah. Of course, we're in that entertainment world, and I've seen it be accepted very much so.
Totally.
Like, I've seen it be adapted, accepted. People are definitely willing to learn. Now, however, we do have a very biased, like... bubble. A bubble of people. We are in a bubble of people. I'm sure if we go into the middle of nowhere America... they don't even know what the hell we're
let me
talking
play devil's
about.
advocate, right? Because before, when I would think about just like the gendered language of Spanish, correct? I felt like Latin American sufficed as a gender neutral term.
So no, that's fair.
That's why I was so confused the first time I ever saw Latinx, because I was like, Latin American is gender neutral. That's what I had always thought growing up.
I also thought, I was like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how are they going to change the whole language? It's so gendered.
But maybe they just felt like a sense of erasure.
Absolutely. Well, as you were saying, like, if it comes from the protests and the activists, like, that's a very valid way to protest and to argue. But if there's going to be so much critique on that, then how can we maybe look at the term Latin American in itself, and maybe, I don't know, that could be more universally used in a way that doesn't offend as many people? Well, I don't know.
There are people within, like...
I like both of those terms.
Me as well. And I know that a lot of people within Latin America, like the mainland itself, just use the term Latin America. Or now they're using the term Latine, which is more, it fits better into the Spanish language itself.
Right, because you just change the letter at the end, right? You drop the A or the O, and then you put an A when referring to that person, right? Which makes sense because it's a little easier to, like, speak that way naturally without throwing, like, an X. Like, you can't throw X at the end of, like, table. CJX. Like, that'd be a little weird. So...
And in general, like, the word X isn't even a word.
Exactly.
It's like, isn't even a sound. It's not a sound phonetically in the language.
I love Latine. I think that's
I love Latine too.
Absolutely. And people are claiming that, and people are being very proud of that. And I think that we should listen to those people, because there's a reason that they felt that the terms that we have already discussed, like Latin or like Latinx, do not suffice, right? So there's a reason that it came about in the first place, and we should look at that.
Absolutely. And we need to support our non-binary siblings in Latin America specifically, because there are so few that unlike publicly.
Good point.
And because there's a huge community, but I meant within the culture itself, it's so
it's not understood,
not very accepted and not very understood. Unlike here, unlike there's a big movement here within America, within the States, where we're like Latinx and we enforce it and we project it onto the media. That's not the case over there. You know, which is I'm very curious to see. Of course, I've never seen like the arts, like the smaller arts communities within Latin America themselves, like firsthand. Obviously because we grew up here. But I'm wondering if how often is that term actually adapted into their language, or is it just used amongst the community
I would
itself?
love to
Shout out to the ones that are really going for it there,
Yeah,
because especially where it's less accepted and stuff. And I'm sure there are people out there. If you're out there, and you're watching. Like, God bless you, because you're really doing it, and it's hard, especially when the whole society.
It's hard enough for us here, like at the college, at the liberal arts college that we went to. Like, I can't even imagine like having that conversation in my hometown.
And at the end of the day, no matter how much we like want to claim, we do have American in us, so we are assimilated into American culture, which within that means that we are able to be like, no, because we are individualistic, right? And we could be like, no, you're wrong, this is what I believe, and I'm okay to believe that. Within Latin America, especially like generationally, how do you tell your grandparents, no, it's Latinx? They're gonna be like, huh?
Especially because there it's like less like nuclear families. Like people are living in like multi-generational homes.
Exactly.
So like there's no like sense of self necessarily.
Of course,
it's like you are yourself in the family unit.
In this unit.
Yes.
That we have
and we are all together.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Latinx because like as opposed to Latin, just because like the A and the O, like they have their own letter, you know. So like I feel like instead of just taking away the letter, let's give them the letter.
For sure.
Especially because like when you're talking about like large groups of people, like the masculine plural version is what's usually used, and that happens in English too. Like in a lot of old documents, they're like all men are created equal.
Well, they meant that.
And
then
they
meant white men at that.
They meant but that's like weren't you taught that when like in history class they were like, well, men included everybody. That was just like the term that was like the catch-all, and I was like, baby, I don't think so. I think they really didn't want me. And then they were like, just kidding.
That was only land-owning white
men.
Correct.
That's all
That's literally
Don't try to act like
exactly.
No.
So I just think that like Latinx, like give them the letter, you know, like
give them the flowers they deserve. Absolutely.
You know, because like fuck men anyway, like fuck the patriarchy.
No men were hurt in this video.
You heard it here first, but also
men, fuck the patriarchy.
But fuck the no, 100%. Yeah, but like the people who like made these rules,
and
you know,
honestly, shout out to all the men in Latin America that are using the Latinx term, because I would love to see it if that's the case. I would love to see it. And I'm sure there's someone out there who is, because the world is large. And
she is big.
She's big. And it's true, especially like if you have a non-binary or trans person in your family. Us as the young generation, we hold a responsibility to our siblings, to our friends, to our family members, to support them in that, especially in the Latin American society within itself.
And I'll go ahead and say that these are our ideals as the liberal women that we are.
Right.
I know I come from a conservative family, and my parents, both of them, would be hella confused trying to discuss a gender non-binary term.
I've had so many long conversations about
and
that.
Of course, too, like I remember there was a gender non-conforming person at my high school when I was a freshman. And my mom was so, because they were in my theater program, and you know all the moms get together and they like, me.
They got a
which my mom was never that queen, because she hated all the gossip.
Because
she's that queen.
She's that bitch. You know, she's above that.
She seems like she was the mom that was never at the PTA meetings, but like did the hours that she needed to do. You know what I mean? But at those hours, like they were talking about like that person's mom came and did their hours as well. And so, of course, all the moms were like, oh, my God, this person, like, one day is this, one day it's that. They changed their gender. What is that? Like, blah, 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 blah. And I remember I was, like, shook because that was the first time I had ever seen that. And I was less judgmental but more confused. I was like, I'd never seen that before. And it's so interesting just also in the political climate that we're in now, how visible things are. You know what I mean? And how quickly we're changing. So sometimes I look back on our parents and I'm like, they must be so confused as to what's going on. But that's why it's on us to give them the resources. That's why it's on us to not let up. Because
and I think the best thing that they can do is like just listen. Like just be open-minded and like keep asking questions. And I'm thankful that like I have family that like has asked me, been like, well, I've seen this before. Can you like explain that to me? Because like I'm not like against that. I just like don't know.
Absolutely.
And like you're with the shits.
That's kind of how. Yeah, that's very much how my mom is, and. Sometimes my grandmother's like that, but also I'm like, you're old, so you're old.
Shout out to the art that is giving that visibility, like one day at a time, right?
For sure.
Elena has a significant other, is what they call it, which is great.
When they did that whole thing,
yeah,
I was like,
it's great. Yeah, so non-binary partner, right?
Yeah.
And think about all the older generation, Latin American people that are watching this, because like I know me and my parents watched that show together.
Rita Moreno's in it.
Yeah, Rita Moreno's in it. Like, come on.
They want to see her.
Exactly.
I want to see her. That curtain open every single time. When I was like, get that curtain.
And that introduced them to that concept.
Yeah.
And we had a dinner table discussion where they literally asked, which I was like, yes, thank you, about that, because, sometimes it's played off like it's like a joke, and so I think they were like a little confused, like, oh, is it funny because it's weird? I'm like, no. It's funny because they're playing on, that yes, exactly. Yeah. But it's valid. And so, I explained it to them, but it opened the discussion. So that's why the representation in art is so important, because that's where the Sobre Mesa happens.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Media are the biggest talking points that we have with our community, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially in this last year during the pandemic, during the quarantine, like, unless you were purposefully reaching out to be, hey, how are you? Like, trying to catch up. At the end of the day, what have we done except binge our
series?
Yes, exactly. And scroll through everything.
Exactly. So we are talking about media like we always have, but even more so.
And even with all the protests that came out this summer and everything, like I think it just putting everything in front of people's faces was kind of what we needed.
Yes,
100%.
1000%. All cards on the table, like and I feel like we're not even completely there.
No, not even close. No.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that we're constantly the evolution is constantly it's constantly happening.
Yeah.
Now, another term that we have failed to mention yet is the term Spanish.
Yes.
The blanket, like early 2000s, like, are you Spanish?
Hispanic,
How many
Spanish.
people in high school were like, are you Spanish?
Yeah. Like, how many rap songs are like, I got me a Spanish girl?
Spanish mommy. Yeah. Spanish mamacita.
Yep. So from Spain.
And Spanish people are European, right?
Actually.
So they're from the actual Spain. And a lot of those people came to Latin America to colonize said lands and integrated with the people. There's a lot of Spanish descent through all of Latin America.
All of Latin America.
And we shouldn't shy away from that. However, we also shouldn't shy away from the fact that those people who are from Latin America are not Spanish, right? Although they have Spanish in them and in their cultures, we may speak Spanish. We are Hispanic. But we are not Spanish.
No.
There's a term Spanish, there's the term Hispanic, and then there's the term Latino, Latinx, Latina.
So people from Spain are Spanish, but they are not Latino, Latinx.
They are Hispanic, however. Hispanic is under the umbrella that your country of descent speaks Spanish. So that includes every country in Latin America that speaks Spanish and Spain. Then you have Latino, Latinx, Latina. And that includes people in Latin America. That does not include Spain. But it includes Brazil.
Yes.
And Haiti.
Brazil, but not Hispanic, right? Because they speak Portuguese.
However, some people of Brazil
are
Hispanic
true.
because they speak Spanish, so they can claim Hispanic.
That's right.
Like their personal selves being Hispanic.
But the country
it's
itself.
more complex than
Of course.
There's not one blanket term.
Blanket term ever.
Yeah.
And then you have the Haitians, or is it the Haitians?
Yeah, the Haitians are Latinos, but they are not Hispanic. They speak primarily Creole.
But they're calling the original name of the
island
was Española.
Was actually Haiti before the colonizers came.
What?
I didn't know that.
No, of course.
Yes.
Of
The whole island was called
Haiti.
And then when Spain and France decided they were going to divide this island in the Caribbean, that's when the Dominican side was Santo Domingo. It was called Santo Domingo originally, and then the Haitian side was Saint Domingue. So it was literally just the French and the Spanish splitting this island, right? And then
How did we get to Dominican Republic?
Basically, they had fought back from Haiti. So what had happened was that finally, when the Haitians had gained their independence from France, they actually went across the entire island, right? So they conquered the entire island, and they said, the entire island will be a Black republic, right? And then the Dominican people, who were very used to this European lifestyle with the Spanish people, were like, we will not have that. So they fought back, and the Independence Day that they celebrate in Dominican Republic is the independence from Haiti. So there's also that feeds into a lot of Dominican Haitian tensions, right? We'll get deeper into this
another
time.
episode.
Another time. It's very deep.
Don't mean to derail.
But it's a really valid question because there is a lot of shared history. Of course, it's one island in the middle of the Caribbean. Like there is shared land, there's shared history, right? And there's a lot of tension on this island, and Dominicans in particular in the Latinx community get a bad rap for being anti-Black, right?
Yes.
But there was a lot of not only just like, I don't want to say hatred, but like animosity towards the Haitians taking over the Dominican side, right? And them fighting back, and also the caste system, right?
Of course.
In addition to all of it. So it's very complex, it's very nuanced. We'll get deeper into this another time.
Yes.
Definitely.
Because that's not today's topic.
Yeah, but on the subject of, terms that encompass entire experiences, maybe we should talk about Latinidad, the name of our company.
Yes.
Because there is some backlash there.
Absolutely.
So I like it for, my personal reason is that I feel that there is a shared experience among people of Latin American descent. I feel like that is true, but I also don't feel that we're limited by that, right? Like it's not one thing is true for all of us, right? Like, well, you're Latin American, so you must like this, you must speak like that, you must not necessarily. Like if you look at Spanish language in general, the amount of accents that are regional within, not just within countries, within countries.
Yeah. I mean, think about here. People have Southern accents, people have Jersey accents, people have,
and that is true.
Globally universal.
Always. Yeah. And I always find it funny when I like look at a casting breakdown. It's a certain character, and it'll say like Spanish accent. Yeah. Like, what does that mean? Like, literally from Spain. I know you don't mean that.
I know. I know you don't mean that. And then you also have the Spanish accents of like those specific countries. Then you have the Spanish, the Latin American accents of like Miami accent? Yes. Do you want a New Yorker accent?
Yeah.
Like, what
do you want like a Spanglish?
Do you want a Chicano accent?
Yeah, and I definitely, that's why I like it, because I feel like it's about us. It's about the collective of us and sharing that experience and celebrating that experience, but also realizing that we're all super unique. We're all super different. We have different regionalisms, different upbringing. Some of us were born here, some of us weren't. Like it's way more complex than just saying like, all Latin Americans are this way.
For sure.
Yes. Yeah, and I also think that it's important that like Latinidad has gotten backlash because a lot of people feel that it erases Black Latinx and indigenous people as well, which is like that's the origins of this country are the indigenous people here. Like
of course.
They were genocided, and so like for us to just ignore that, like we all come from that, so it's disrespectful.
And maybe that's a part of that representation thing. It's because maybe some people see it that way because Latinidad is being used in the context of the stereotypical right shade of brown, and maybe, if once we reject that, we just, we have to push back on that and say, but that includes Black and indigenous people.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Latinidad, I feel like the criticism on the word itself, I feel like goes back to the Spanish origins, right? And then how they utilized, so I've read. I wasn't there. But
if you were, please.
If you were there, please let me know.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you.
But them using like the actual conquistadors using Latino and Latin and all these like Latinidad terms to exclude the Black and indigenous people from what they were trying to do, right? Yeah. So when we use it, Latinidad, when we named ourselves Mi Latinidad, when we talk about it, we completely reject that idea of exclusion, right? Absolutely. It includes all of us.
And also I think we all had the privilege of naming the company that because we do live in the States, and that is the main thing that ties us all together, is that we are Latin American, right? Because if you go back to other places in the mainland, especially indigenous people, they will think of themselves as like, I am Taino, or I am Colombian, I am so and so. Then they'll look at the next range of like, in the broader term, sure, I'm Latin. I'm Latinx. Yes. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
But they'll like, think of themselves in nationally first or regionally first,
because
and then
they're not anywhere else except that place.
Like
they don't have to.
Yeah, because that's their country, so that's what they're worried about.
Absolutely. Well, it's how they're seen in their own country, right? Like nobody who's living in a second world country is looking at
no, it makes sense.
Their peers.
It makes sense. Yeah. Whereas here, because we are in the minority, we're looking for each other. We're like, where are you at? I don't care what kind. Like, come over here.
I know.
Yeah.
Any brown person in the room makes me breathe easier.
Yeah.
Yes. The second you walk in, you're like, where are they? Where are they?
Who's enough color at all in the general vicinity makes me feel safer. It makes me feel calmer. It makes me feel more.
Feels like I'm in the right place at least,
Yeah.
Yeah, it always sucks to go to an audition and be the only brown person in the room.
Oh my god.
Looking around like, oh, do I even belong here?
To go anywhere.
Especially if it's for like a brown girl, like a brown character.
Which has happened to me so
many times.
So many times. Well, and you either feel like it's like, well, I'm either the exception or I'm the throwaway.
Yeah.
One of the two. It's never
because
due
it's
to
never
your just pure talent.
It's never getting cast.
Yeah, exactly. It's either I got cast because I'm brown or I'm not getting cast because I'm brown.
There's
or
always
not brown
a voice
enough
in my
or
head.
I'm too brown or like something.
Yeah.
It's always something.
And then you have people who just blatantly try to show, like, performatively show Latini that when they do not identify with it at all. They decide they're a nice cinnamon skin tone and that's enough. That passes. Yeah. And especially like in Hollywood and in the media, we've seen that for so long.
And unfortunately that also is due to the lack of
shout out to Natalie
stories. Due to the lack of stories of like other brown people, honestly.
Yes.
Because luckily we are under the position that we do have now made it enough in the entertainment industry that there are Latinx people that are putting on Latinx stories.
Yeah.
Thank God. But we need more. Like everyone needs more, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Not just us.
So that is where that comes from, where it's like, well, maybe they're too brown to get the white girl role too. So then they feel like they can get the Latina role. But that's not okay either.
But it's like, I feel like for us as young actresses, how many times were you called in for just a young lady as opposed to a young brown lady? You know what I mean? It's very rare. It's very rare, I feel, in my experience, that I have been considered for a traditionally white role. It's very, very...
Well, and not only that, if it is a young lady, and this is just like maybe my own insecurity, but I'm always like, oh, well, then I'm not going to get it. Because why would they have called me? Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you.
And honestly,
and I feel that.
And recently, unless it says Afro-Latina, I'm always like, I might not get it. Because I don't look like the traditional, like, Sofia Vergara. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. Because at the end of the day, we need more visibility in the stories, and we need more Latin girls that look all different.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole point is no erasure, right? It's for everyone to be present and seen.
Yes, and like making the audience and just like the community of the U.S. as a whole understand that like Latinidad is so complex, and for up until like this summer, like they did not have to think like that. They didn't have to look outside.
I mean, they still
Mexico.
don't have to.
Yeah. No, I know, but like, and
a lot of them still don't.
A lot of them still
we
don't.
would like you to.
Yes, but like at least now it seems like people are thinking about it or like making steps towards
just
that.
You know?
Yes, 100%. So
absolutely.
and also like, okay, well if we all get called in for like young Latina women, like we all have different ratios of getting it based on like Eurocentric features, skin type, hair type, like all of that, like how
and
old or young.
Just your talent too.
Exactly. No, like no, I know, but isn't that like so sad that that's like so far down on the list?
Yeah,
talent.
absolutely.
Yes. It really so much of it is physical and like well how like stereotypically pretty or not pretty are you?
Because of preconceived images, you know, that they've been fed forever.
Yeah,
we've all been fed. Literally,
we are guilty of it too.
Yeah.
I feel like the movie Roma. Have you guys seen it?
Yes,
so good.
So
good. You need to watch that.
You have to watch it.
But that did like a perfect depiction of that whole idea of like the idealistic Mexican woman versus the versus the what we see the most of in Mexico, which is the most erasure in Mexico. Mexico is very notorious of doing that specifically because they are also one of the heads of entertainment in general.
Yeah,
they have a blanket of Latin America. They have a big hold on Latin American entertainment. Colombia, Miami.
Yeah.
Miami.
The country itself.
A country itself.
Its own world.
Its
Absolutely.
own place.
And then if we think about Mexican terms specifically, the term Chicano has become important in that community as well. And specifically it started in the 60s with the Chicano movement, in which they wanted to separate themselves from Mexican American because they didn't want to assimilate into American culture, especially because a lot of migrant workers in the West felt like they were treated wrongly. They wanted to unionize. But then that kind of had an erasure within itself. And the more that immigrants came and the more Mexican immigrants came, they actually wanted to assimilate more into American culture, hence why the term Hispanic came around.
Right, and then Chicana became weaponized in a way, you know, which is why a lot of people rejected it. And there has been a reclaiming as of late.
Oh, especially in East LA. That's like all over.
Reclaiming it, making it their own, going like, no, proud of that heritage. And it's become a little more specific too, to mean people of Mexican descent that were born here. Now people are even starting to get that specific with the term, which is interesting because it didn't start that way.
Yes,
yeah,
they
that
talked
evolved.
about that in an episode on Vida.
Oh really?
With the younger sister, where she like goes on where she's like at a party and they're asking her like, well, she's at like a party with like all Mexicans from Mexico, and she does this beautiful monologue where she's like, well, I don't know, like, am I Mexican? All of my like my parents are, but like they were born there. I was born here. I don't speak Spanish, but like I have the Spanish, like the Spanglish accent. So like, and every time I say I'm Chicano or Chicana, like so people say no. If I say I'm Mexican, people say no. Like it's like whatever I do, it's not right. It's
Identity
not
crisis.
enough of anything.
Identity crisis.
Identity crisis on so many levels, right?
Yeah.
Because we're expected to be put into these boxes that are not clean and clear for most of us. Like it's not as simple as the census. When you check
on the subject
box of white, black, Pacific Islander, whatever it is in particular, there is no cinnamon skin mixed race.
No, it's not like there's no brown box.
Mixed brown. Like there's no place for a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
Like
It was
I was told
confusing
as
as
a
a
very
kid.
young child, the first time I got a passport, I was told check white because
Same.
at the end of the day, you're not any of these other things, and there is
And it was
white.
confusing 'cause
I was in
like, I
other-
feel like
No,
I'm
exactly.
not.
You
I
look at
checked-
yourself and you're like,
I'm like,
I am though.
Yeah, I was.
I'm thinking about all my white peers who made me feel so like different and other and all that,
exactly.
and I'm like, I am not one of them. They have never made me feel like I'm
yeah.
I
welcome
can't
in
claim
this
that.
group.
Well,
Just like I
also,
can't claim
like,
anything else.
You don't look like them either.
No, and
Yeah.
that's simply like an oversight, right?
I was
Yeah.
I was a true other girl. I clicked other every single time.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I click black on the race and Hispanic on the little box where they're like, "Are you Hispanic?"
It's so-
yeah, and I'm like, "What about everyone?"
No,
else?
I know
Why
it
are
really
you here?
singles them out. Like, what
Yeah.
about like every
The
other
That's
kind of
very
brown?
weird because
Like,
you don't see that with like, "Are you Middle Eastern?" or
no,
something.
exactly.
It's like, "Are you
Well,
Hispanic?"
they're also classified as white too.
Well, exactly.
There's like
and they're
laws
not
saying,
necessarily all white either.
No.
They're in the brown category as
exactly.
well.
It's like every kind of brown is just like
completely
No.
erased.
Yeah.
And that's completely
But should they put the term brown on there? That could be
Well,
problematic
No.
too.
I know that
I don't know.
I do identify with mixed race if it's
Yeah,
under there because I know generationally that is
that is
the T.
the-
Like
sure,
at the
yeah.
end of the day,
Yeah.
there are many. I like to think
Sure.
of myself as a citizen of the world. Yes,
Yes.
I think that my ancestors
Oh,
came
Mother
from
Earth.
came from all over, right?
Yeah.
But I am this like middle cinnamon skin Dominican girl, right? And I want to be proud of that at all turns, and I should have that right. So why is there no box? If there's a mixed race box, that's what I click.
That's fair.
Or
yeah.
I prefer not to answer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I simply
You
no
do
longer
prefer to.
I prefer to
don't
not
want to.
I will not check white
Doesn't
anymore. I
matter.
refuse.
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah, when I was young, I was always told like by my parents like check white on like health records and stuff because like
Exactly,
they
yeah.
treat you better. Like that was like an
Yeah.
acknowledgement that was made, and it's true. I mean, we see how
Yeah.
they treat black and brown women in this country. Like they are not attended to when they have pain
Oh, yeah.
and stuff. And that's a whole other issue, but like
we'll get there.
yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, like especially on medical things and like things when you're
Any
checking
public
for
record.
any kind of
Yeah.
public record where you're like filling out that box. For the longest time, I was like, well, I mean, it makes sense for me. I'm half white. Like, half of my family is white. Yeah. But at the same time, like...
It's not a lie.
It's not a lie, but it's not a truth.
It's very fleeting.
Exactly.
I feel like also just recently I started seeing when you see those boxes or whatever that you can hit more than one.
Yeah.
Because that used to be not the case at all. I've started to see that. Yeah.
I have not seen that yet, but the last couple of years I've always done other, and then I hated when you did other, and then you had to like write write it in,
I'm
like
what's
do the
it
work
to
yourself.
You? What is it to you?
Exactly.
Let me
What
know.
are you doing with that information? Excuse you.
So the thing is, like, I don't know what the solution is, but I know that whatever is going on now ain't it, right? There has to be a better way. I don't know what that is. Like, hit us up if you know, if you think you know, if you have an idea, like, oh, what the census should do is this actually, because you know, I have seen some things proposed, but I don't know. I just don't know what the solution is.
I feel like the solution, or this is, I'm just spitballing here, of course. Please. Yes, I am by no means no expert, but I feel like if we are able to, we as a human, we as a people, especially we as an American people, have been able to categorize people, which, of course, no categorization is going to be perfect because we're all individuals. But if we've been able to be like Middle Eastern, Southeast Asian, Northeast Asian, and then like Latino, Latinx, and then Caribbean, blah, blah, blah. We can have a box of 20-something things. Yeah. And then just do it, because at the end of the day, aren't they just trying to learn the demographics of this country?
Yes.
That's what they're trying to learn.
On the census.
Especially in the
for.
census and whatever the hell else they kind of need it for. Yeah. Like, if you really want to learn the demographics of this country, then get into the different groups and then have an indigenous group for each region. Like, of course, we can't get into every single, like, oh, well, are you this or that native tribe? But you could be like, were you from this region? Were you from this region indigenously? Yeah. And if that's like your truth, then you fill that out as well. Absolutely. And then you fill as many boxes as you need, and we can make those generalizations as time go on, but give people the option.
To make it as accurate as possible, because, you know, if we felt this identity crisis, then I'm sure a bunch of other people will mark in white when they're not, and that makes the data incorrect. It makes it inaccurate.
I know that I won't throw my specific family member under the bus, but I have a family member who is, in fact, a Dominican person who has never once understood the race question, right? Because it's confusing for a lot of us. But had seen all these checked boxes and saw Pacific Islander and identified immediately with Islander, right? Because we're from the Dominican Republic, an island. That is not what that means whatsoever.
Atlantic Islander, maybe.
That's more accurate. But at the end of the day, it really makes me think about how many people cannot identify with any of those boxes and are looking for something to identify with.
It's confusing.
And at the end of the day, this person is just confused, right? Yes. Like, they're not blatantly trying to skew the data. No. They're not trying to be deceptive in any way. It's just like, that is the closest thing they can identify with, that they can understand, and that is simply inaccurate. Yeah. So what can we do to correct this?
There has to be an answer.
Misconception.
That goes as far as college applications too. Yes. I don't know how far we want to get into that, but especially with college with colleges trying to reach more diversity and trying to go into blanket terms.
And financial aid for college.
Aid for colleges as well. Like, it's the opposite of like medical records, where they're like, we want you to seem the most unique. Yes. We want you to seem the most othered that you can. Yes. They would probably benefit from having those boxes as well, so people can accurately say what the tea really is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I also just saw another TikTok by the same woman that I talked about earlier, and she lives in Miami, and she was taking this, like, she was filling out the form and everything, and it had a box for like Latin, for like Latine, and then like it went into like country, and it went into race as well. So like if you were like Afro-Latina, you could check like Black and Latina, and then like Hispanic, not Hispanic, and then it goes even further into like what country are you from, that kind of stuff.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
No, exactly. That's the thing
is,
like, especially when you're trying to do like analytics like that, like go the extra mile. Then
because what's the point of collecting the data if the data
not going to be correct?
Inaccurate.
It's so skewed, obviously, and people want to see them. People will want to be as accurate as possible because they'll see themselves. They'll be like, oh yeah, that is me actually.
It's exciting. Yeah. It is. No, it's so nice to.
It feels validating.
Yes, to be like I'm important enough for people to like
know where I'm at,
to care about this,
especially with the amount of like immigration that has happened in the last 50 years, especially like it just would benefit us as a country more to know what the demographics of each region are. And that would just bring more visibility of people, not even just Latinx people, of people in this country, especially, which is what we are lacking.
Yeah, because there, like, since, like, the 50s, 60s, there's been so much immigration that there's entire generations now of mixed people that are not just black and white mixed. Like, they're every kind of mix, you know? And it's, like, sometimes it doesn't even include white in there, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, so, like, if you can get specific with that, I think it's important because, like, so many people are not just one thing anymore.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just where we're at in this.
And if we can afford to make our tax forms so complicated, we can afford to make the census so complicated.
Yes.
We can.
Exactly.
We can take the time. Like, we should take the time.
Absolutely. Like, literally, what do we have to lose? We have nothing to lose and everything to gain by trying to understand our population better, right? And accurately counting them.
And honestly, it's 2021. Like, as individual as we are, there's gonna be more than one person that's like this, that, and the other. So it would benefit people to know what that demographic looks like in their region, in their town, in their city, in their state, whatever it is.
It's only gonna get more mixed, so we might as well.
We might as well just start setting the standard.
Exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah. Maybe next year. Maybe next census. We have 10 years to figure it out.
That's 10 whole years.
Yeah, 10 whole years. Somebody let them know.
We'll tell someone at the census office.
We will be sending someone at the census office an email. We'll let you know if they come back to us.
We'd like to have a word with your manager.
Just so you know.
Absolutely.
That's so funny.
Oh my god.
But that's us today on terms. Let us know what terms you guys or you all identify with.
If there's something we missed too.
Yeah, if there's something we missed within,
which I'm sure we did,
the Latinx terminology, which I'm sure we have somehow missed a bunch.
But don't worry, because we got so many more episodes coming up.
So
we can cover it for you.
We've got plenty more, and we definitely can talk about different terms, especially within each country as well. But yeah, it's definitely a conversation to be had, and we will continue to have it as the episodes go on.
Yes.
Absolutely. And we hope to include you in on the conversation. So please let us know your thoughts. Reach out. We have our website, milatinidad.org, where you can submit your stuff to us. You can submit comments and thoughts, and we would love to hear from you.
Yes. Follow us on social media as well, so we can see, you know, what's up there. You can tweet at us, let us know what you think, all that stuff. TikTok, make a TikTok explaining a term to us.
We'll watch us on TikTok, letting us know what you all identify as, or if you have a community that we fail to miss. But
yes, because we love talking about language, and so like we definitely will tackle more things about like country specific things and everything. So
until next time, y'all.
Thank you so much for tuning in.
Ciao.